Okay, so here we are with another action figure unboxing, and this is a first for the channel, kind of. It is WWE Superstars, Ric Flair. Woo! Get that out of the way, because you got to give Ric Flair his woo. You got to do that. So, Masters of the WWE Universe, sadly, is no more. In its place, we will have WWE Superstars. Now, the main difference, obviously, is that it is no longer a crossover line with Masters of the Universe, which was, to me, a big part of the charm of that line. So that's gone, sadly. But you can see that it's still made on that Masters of the Universe Origins buck. So they will still play with Masters of the Universe figures. So that's a good thing. Ric Flair is a character that I really wanted for that line because he's probably my favorite wrestler of all time. When I was a little kid, we went to watch wrestling when it was being taped at TBS at Channel 17 Studios, back before, CNN was even a thing. Back when Ted Turner was just the guy who owned the local UHF station. And wrestling was a big part of their what do you call it? The stuff that they played on their TV, their repertoire. Their content. They had old movies, old sitcoms, Japanese superhero shows. It's Spectre Man, Space Giants, old cartoons. The Flintstones, I think, was always on TBS, and you had wrestling, the WCW wrestling, but it wasn't WCW yet. It was NWA, I think, at that time. The show was still called World Championship Wrestling. It was it was always called that. But I think eventually they got the idea to shorten it to WCW to be like WWF in some ways. But it was always kind of a different flavor. It was kind of grittier and less cartoonish. That's not to say it wasn't cartoonish at all, because it's wrestling. But it wasn't quite like how WWE did it, or WWF as we called them at the time. There was a brief period, I think, in the 80s where, like, Vince McMahon bought the show, and that was called Black Friday. Started out because the fans that were used to NWA being on TBS did not like seeing the WWE stuff, WWF, what do you want to call it? I still kind of think of it as WWF, but they always want to like retrocon it into WWE. Whatever. It's it's Stalin-like tactics. So it's still a very 80s looking toy, even without the Masters of the Universe influence, and I sense a little bit more influence from the Remco figures of NWA, actually, which Ric Flair was one of those, and also the first figure of Scott Hall. Really cool guy. Very sad that he passed away recently. Scott Hall bought me pizza once. He was like one of the coolest dudes I ever met. So, but we're here to talk about this Ric Flair action figure. But you can see the packaging is it's kind of similar to the old LGN wrestling figures, because I think they had a similar thing going on with like the blue background and the wrestling arena and everything like that. But it's also very similar, like I said, to those Remco wrestling figures, which also were based off of a Masters of the Universe like buck. It was the same one that they used for Warlord and Warrior Beasts and their Conan line, which is ridiculously expensive, even though those figures aren't very good. I was looking at them recently and being like, man, they just phoned in this Conan line completely. This could have been such a big hit, but they just kind of ruined it. They did it so badly. Warlord they did a pretty good job with. Warrior Beasts were pretty cool. The wrestlers were fine. But anyway, let's have a look at the back of the packaging. And we can see, again, this is a very Remco-like back of the package, where just, like, almost no effort is put into it. It's just black and white, and no color whatsoever. But the thing is like, I'm pretty sure Mattel put a lot of effort into making it look like the Remco figure backs that had no effort put into it. Like, I could see somebody at Mattel's design team, like, throwing together something in, like, 5 minutes. You know, it's like they're just doing it on their lunch break real quick so they can get it over with. And then the boss comes over, he's like, is that the back of the package for those WWE Superstar figures? Yeah, I just threw it together in like 5 minutes, but, I mean, I figured it should be good enough, right? That's too good. You gotta change that, man. It's like, it looks like you put actual effort into it. Like, we need it to look like crap. Fine. So then he spends, like, hours laboring over it to make it look as crappy as possible. That's kind of what I think happened. So good job making it look like crap. It's awesome. Seriously, I'm not being sarcastic. I think it's supposed to look like this. It's supposed to look like, just lazy and cheap. And it does. So good job. So we can see the other figures in line is Honky Tonk Man, Hollywood Hulk Hogan, the other one that I really want, and Bray Wyatt, who's like a modern wrestler. I wasn't even able to get his figure of the Fiend, because that's the same guy, I think. But yeah, like, I'm not that into modern wrestling, so I don't know too much about it. Forgive my ignorance. But it's just, I just don't watch a lot of it, so sorry. And you can see Ric Flair has his entrance robe. They got a little blurb about that on there. Let's go ahead and open them up. Oh, and let's look at the bubble real quick before I do that. You can see it still kind of conforms to the shape of the figure. Like the Masters of the Universe Classics, Origins, and the Masters of the WWE Universe. But it's, kind of rounded off, more like, they want it to still, I guess, have that kind of vague look, but not look exactly like that. I'm not really that familiar with the Remco bubbles. Maybe this is the shape of the Remco bubble. I'll have to research that later. It doesn't have the dot in the middle either, but the dot isn't really necessary since they have that plastic tray on there. Oh, we're going to discuss that. But yeah, so my standard way of opening these type of figures is to start at the top, at the head, and just kind of pierce my finger into it, rip it open. And you can see how cartoonish these people are in here. And they've got, like, little wrestling logos on their shirts, which I like. Yeah, D-Generation X, and Ric Flair, Hulkamania. So, can't quite tell who this is. Maybe that's some kind of John Cena shirt or something. But yeah, so Ric Flair is drawn, like, in a very comic book sort of way, but still, like, a fairly realistically proportioned figure. And these guys down here look like they're from, like, Looney Tunes or the Flintstones or something. They're that kind of cartoonishness. So, and then we got a nice surprise with this figure, and something I've been saying they should do with these wrestling figures for a while, and something I've been saying they should do with the Origins. I think that this would be a good bonus to include in that, is we got some extra hands, finally. Like, I don't know what the point is of giving us all these, like, interchangeable parts if the figures themselves don't come with interchangeable parts. Like, you got the hands that can be swapped out. Give us some hands that can be swapped out. Like He-Man has the same gripping hand and the same open hand that he's had since the 80s. Why not give a little set of hands like this to He-Man, so he can have a closed fist, or he can have an open hand, or he can have a gripping hand, or what have you. So, on the figure, there's already 2 gripping hands. Oh, we've got another accessory in here too that I didn't know about. So we're gonna look at that in a second. Okay, so we got 2 closed fists, one for the left and one for the right. So there's that. I'll set the other, there we go. So those both over there. And then what's more important for me for Ric Flair is that he's got this open hand, which I'm not really usually that big a fan of the open hands, because I prefer to have the hands that can hold weapons. I'm not that big a fan of the fist hands for the same reason. But I like having extras of them in case I want to switch them out, because I like having display options. But that open hand is going to be really important for Ric Flair so that he can do the chops. You want Ric Flair to be able to do the chops, so you actually want him to have an open hand. So, and then we've got the damnable rubber bands. And I dislike these very much, especially on this figure, for the reason that you can see that they're kind of bunching up the sleeves. And I don't want it to cause creases in the sleeves. Let's go ahead and take his accessory out of the tray that's in there, and we can see that's a microphone that says, has the WWE logo on it for some reason. I know it's a branding thing, but this is clearly an early 80s, late 70s kind of Ric Flair, and he wasn't working for WWF at the time. He didn't come to WWF until like the later part of the 80s. And I'm pretty sure he'd had a haircut by this point. He didn't have it, his hair wasn't this long anymore. All right, so there was not a tab holding his hand on this side, but there is on this side. That's really annoying. At least be consistent. I would have rather you had like a tab on both sides than just on one side for the sake of consistency. All right, so we got Ric Flair out of his robe, and we can see, if we look at it closely, this is actually printed. The whole thing is printed on white fabric. It's not red fabric with like silver printing over it. It's white fabric with both red and gray, not silver, gray printing over it. And I think it probably would have been better if they just made a red robe and put silver printing over it, so it would have been like more sparkly and shiny, like the way that Ric Flair's robe is supposed to be. And it says Ric Flair on the back, so that's nice. I probably would have rather it said Nature Boy, as long as I'm nitpicking. But it's cool that they put something on the back. So that's nice. It's got like lots of little details printed onto it. And you can tell that this is like in a bespoke sort of pattern where like everything is supposed to go where it's supposed to go. It's not like they could have gotten lazy and just printed it in such a way where like, they just kind of randomly had a pattern over the fabric and then just cut the pieces out whenever. No, this is obviously like where it's printed out in such a way where like it's supposed to look like that. So the robe is good. They did a good job with the robe. They could have done a better job with the robe, I ain't gonna lie, but I'm pretty happy with it. I think they did a pretty good job with it. So maybe next time they can do an even better job if they ever do another one of these figures. I mean, knock on wood. But, I mean, there's a lot of other wrestlers they need to get to in this line. Honestly, looking at the back of the package, maybe I might buy Honky Tonk Man. I'm probably not going to buy Bray Wyatt just because he isn't, like, somebody that I know that well. I probably would have bought The Fiend because I thought that was a pretty cool figure, and it fit pretty well in with Masters of the Universe, I would have thought. But I didn't really get the chance to. I saw it once at the store, and I didn't have a whole lot of money, and they had, like, another figure I would have rather wanted. I think it was Mr. T, so I got Mr. T instead. But I would have bought The Fiend if if I had more money and he would have stuck around. If they had stocked more of them and I could have found one later, I would have bought one. So yeah, I probably won't ever bother with tying this robe back up again, but I'm glad they have some ties on it so you can do that. But I'll probably just, whenever he wears the robe, just have it hanging loose off of him like that, just because I'm lazy like that. But we are going to take the robe off because we want to get a look at the full figure. So let's kind of pull that off of his arms. I'm going to be very careful because I don't know how delicate this fabric is. I want to make sure I don't pull it in such a way where I get a run in it. And make sure it doesn't get caught on anything. It did get kind of pinched in his armpit there. So there we got Ric Flair ready to wrestle. Now, One of my things with Ric Flair action figures, one of my pet peeves that I notice that they get wrong with Ric Flair, and it's a pretty easy thing to fix usually, but I think it's going to be a problem on this one, is you can see that his knee pads are on his knees. And Ric Flair, as any wrestling fan will tell you, does not wear his knee pads on his knees. He wears his knee pads below his knees. Why does he do this? I don't know. I don't understand it. Maybe it helps him get women. But normally with most wrestling figures, it's pretty easily for me to slide the knee pads below the knees and call it a day. But unfortunately, because the legs are so squat on these guys, and you can see that the ratio between the knee and the calf muscle is insane, like it is on any He-Man figure. I'm not going to be able to do that with this guy. Maybe if I took him off and cut him up, I might be able to glue it back on, but I'm not going to go through all that for this guy, especially because I don't know how rare this figure is going to wind up being, and because like I said, it's usually these guys would show up at my Walmart, and for the first couple of waves they'd hang around for a while, but I think once it really caught on, a wave would show up and it would vanish within a couple of days. And that's why I'm worried I might not be able to get a Hulk Hogan. And I wasn't able to get the Snake Mountain playset, the Rattlesnake Mountain wrestling ring. I wasn't able to get that, so I don't have Hulk Hogan, which is a pretty big hole in a line of mostly '80s oriented wrestlers. To be missing Hulk Hogan is like to have a line of DC figures without Superman. But whatever. Ric Flair was the one I wanted the most because, like I said, he's pretty much my favorite wrestler. So Ric Flair is not one of these guys who's had one single color scheme. Like Hulk Hogan is pretty much always anytime he's at least a good guy wore yellow. When he's a bad guy, he wears black. But when he's a good guy, he wears yellow, red, and yellow. But Ric Flair's worn several different color wrestling outfits. And for this figure, obviously, they chose red as the main color, which is a good color. It's a good color on him. I think it looks good. So you see it. Red trunks, red knee pads, red boots. The robe itself, of course, as I mentioned before, was red. And then they got the nice little Ric Flair monogram there, RF. And that's on the trunks. And then at a much less fancy script, he's got it on his boots as well. So branding is important, kids. And the head sculpt is decent. It looks like Ric Flair. I don't know if I would have gone with that sort of like expression. It looks kind of sardonic. But I probably would have gone woo with that expression, or something like that. Something where it looks like he's actually talking would have been good. Also, the thing is, Ric Flair, what made him such a great wrestler for me is not only was his actual wrestling skills really good, he was actually a really good wrestler, but his mic skills were really good too. Some guys are good on the mic and they're good at shooting promos and they've got personality and a gimmick that works. And that's enough for him. Hulk Hogan isn't actually that good of a wrestler in the technical sense, but he's good at playing to the crowd and hyping the crowd up and getting the crowd on his side or getting the crowd to hate him again if he's a bad guy. But in terms of technical wrestling, you don't really see that much from Hulk Hogan in that regard. Ric Flair is an excellent technical wrestler and is also excellent in the mic, and he's just probably the greatest all around wrestler of the the late 70s, early 80s, that whole era. So the era that I would have grown up watching wrestling, he was probably one of the best all around guys, if not the best. I kind of feel there's other guys that have come by later on that could match him in terms of that regard. Steve Austin was a great wrestler before he got hurt, and then he kind of had to change to a more sort of less technical, more sort of brutal style. And of course, Steve Austin is one of those where he's just like really great on the mic and everything like that. And The Rock is another one. The Rock was the guy that I kind of felt like was sort of the spiritual successor to Ric Flair in a lot of ways. So the last accessory I want to talk about, which I kind of just set aside, I said, "Ooh, this is cool. We're going to talk about this." Is he's got a pair of sunglasses. So, like I said, I remember seeing him show up at the Channel 17 studios when we went to see wrestling there, and saw him get out of this Corvette with tinted windows, and he had a pretty girl with him, and wearing his Armani suit and sunglasses, and I'm just like, this guy is like the coolest guy I've ever seen. So of course I was a fan of Ric Flair from then on, and unlike a lot of action figures, which I've mentioned in my Roadblock review, I usually don't have very good luck getting these sunglasses on, but with Ric Flair, they went on perfectly, and they seem to be holding on really well. I might have a hard time actually getting them off. But this was pretty brilliantly designed. You can see that he's got, like, this glorious mane of platinum blonde hair. This gorgeous mullet, and it's a separate piece of plastic. And I was able to fit the arms of the glasses very easily between the hair and the head, and it seems to grip on there fairly well. And this is the Ric Flair that I remember. So let's go ahead and we'll put the robe back on him. I'm putting the robe back on him. Again, very carefully, because I don't want to get a run in it, or tear it, or have it fray at the ends, because I don't know how delicate this fabric is. So we got the robe back on him, and we got the sunglasses, and we'll go ahead and put the mic in his hand. And it seems like this mic is probably the one that was designed for figures with larger hands, because it's a very thick mic compared to, like, weapons that would come with a Masters of the Universe Origins figure. He's got all the same articulation that those figures have, so if you're familiar with those figures, it's the same thing. I hadn't tried to move his elbows yet, because they seem kind of stiff, but I was able to get this one loose. So, there we go. There's Ric Flair shooting a promo, and I'll get that flip down. Pretty cool, huh? So, limousine riding, Armani suit wearing, diamond ring wearing, Rolex wearing, wheeling dealing, woo! Kiss stealing son of a gun! So there we go. So yeah, I highly recommend this figure, especially if you're a fan of old school wrestling like I am, if you grew up with this guy, and think he's one of the greatest like I do. He's definitely worth buying. So, I could have him feud with my my Macho Man, Master of the WWE Universe. She was mine before she was yours. Woo! But yeah, so there's Ric Flair. There we go, the Nature Boy himself, and pretty happy with this figure. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe and all the fun YouTube stuff down below. Tell me about your memories of Ric Flair as a wrestler. Tell me about your memories of, like, the old Remco action figures, if you got any memories of those. Tell me about, like, various wrestling action figures and your Ric Flair action figures that you have in your collection. I gave away a lot of my wrestling action figures when I moved, when I was in my early 20s, and I was just, like, looking for stuff to get rid of. And I gave away, like, a lot of my action figures just in general, but I kept my action figures of Ric Flair because he was my favorite. I think I kept one of Mankind, and I kept one of The Undertaker, and I kept one of Kane. I think I had The Rock and Steve Austin, and there were a few that I kept, but I kept all of my Ric Flair figures. And for a while there, like some of them would just kind of disappear from my collection, but I was able to hold on to at least, like, the Ric Flair in the wrestling trunks and the Ric Flair in the Armani suit. So I still have both of those, and now I have this guy. So that's pretty much it for now. We'll talk to you next time. Bye.